Welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into the life of Malcolm X, as told through his autobiography.
Okay.
This book is fascinating. It reveals this incredible journey he went on from a troubled youth
Right.
to becoming this powerful voice for Black empowerment.
Yeah.
So let's explore the events and experiences that kind of shaped his worldview
Sounds good.
and unpack what made him such a captivating and, controversial figure.
Yeah.
He's one of the most fascinating figures of the 20th century.
Yeah. I mean, what's really striking is how Malcolm X's childhood experiences
Right.
with racism and tragedy really laid the foundation
Okay.
for his later activism.
Yeah.
His father was a preacher
Mm-hmm.
and an advocate for Black empowerment.
Right.
And he was murdered when Malcolm X was just a child.
Wow.
Many suspected white supremacists were behind it.
That's an incredibly heavy burden to carry at such a young age.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's no wonder that he developed a deep mistrust of white society.
All right.
And it didn't stop there.
Oh.
Later, his mother,
Mhm.
overwhelmed with grief, was institutionalized.
Right.
And so Malcolm X ended up in foster care.
Okay.
And there, he experienced both kindness,
Yeah.
but also this really ingrained casual racism that constantly reminded him of
Yeah.
his place in society.
You mentioned this anecdote about a judge
Oh, right.
who praised young Malcolm X almost like a prize animal.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that and explain why that was such a pivotal moment for him?
Absolutely. This interaction, while seemingly positive on the surface,
Okay.
really reveals this deep-seated prejudice that was pervasive at the time.
Right.
Even when white people were trying to be kind,
Yeah.
they still reinforced this idea
Yeah.
that Black people were fundamentally different
Yeah.
and somehow lesser than.
So even well-intentioned interactions
Exactly.
still perpetuate this system of inequality.
Exactly. And,
Yeah.
these experiences, on top of the trauma of his father's death and his mother's breakdown, had a profound psychological impact on Malcolm X.
Of course.
It shaped his early views on
Right.
race power
Yeah.
and the injustices that he saw embedded within American society.
So it seems like his move from Michigan to Boston and then to Harlem
Right.
also played a significant role in shaping his worldview.
Yeah, each city served as a stepping stone in his evolution.
Okay.
In Boston, for instance, he encountered what he called the Hill Negroes,
Right.
the Black middle class,
Okay.
who were striving for assimilation and respectability within white society.
And he saw this as a form of self-denial,
He did.
a rejection of authentic Black identity.
Yeah, he felt they were trying to erase their Blackness
Right.
to gain acceptance in a society that would never truly embrace them.
And he contrasted that with his experiences in the town section,
Right.
the ghetto,
Yeah.
where he felt a much stronger sense of community
Yes.
and Black identity.
He was drawn to the energy,
Right.
the rawness,
Mm.
the unapologetic Blackness of the streets.
Right. And it was in Harlem that he really embraced this hustle culture.
He did.
Working as a shoeshine boy, a waiter, even getting involved in the criminal underworld.
Exactly.
Yeah. He even adopted the nickname Detroit Red during this time.
Right.
It sounds like he was trying on different identities, searching for something to hold on to.
Absolutely. And it's through these experiences that we start to see
Yeah.
his charisma and intelligence kind of emerge.
Mm.
He quickly gained notoriety moving up the ranks
Yeah.
in Harlem's illicit circles.
What about his relationship with Sophia,
Right.
the white woman that he was involved with
Right.
during this time? How does that fit into all of this?
It's a complicated relationship
Right.
that reveals a lot about the racial dynamics of that era.
Yeah.
On the one hand, it provided him with a sense of status and transgression within the ghetto community.
All right.
But on the other hand, it also reinforced these power imbalances
Yeah.
that were inherent in interracial relationships at the time.
So it sounds like a microcosm
It is.
of the larger societal issues that he was grappling with.
Precisely. And it's important to remember that all of this is happening before his conversion to Islam.
Right.
We're witnessing the formation of his worldview,
Okay.
the accumulation of experiences that would eventually make him receptive
Yeah.
to the Nation of Islam's message.
So his early life is essentially a crucible forging this sense of identity and
Yes.
purpose.
And prison becomes the catalyst for his transformation.
Okay. Let's talk about that pivotal period.
Sure.
What leads him to the Nation of Islam?
Well, initially, Malcolm X resisted religion.
Right.
He saw it as a crutch for the weak.
Okay.
But while he was serving time for burglary,
Mm.
he received letters from his siblings who had joined the Nation of Islam.
Right.
and their descriptions of the nation's teachings really intrigued him.
What specifically resonated with him?
Well, the Nation of Islam at that time offered this message
Okay.
of Black empowerment, self-reliance,
Yeah.
and separation from white society.
Yeah.
They condemned white oppression
Okay.
and called for Black people to reclaim their history and identity.
Given everything that he had experienced,
Right.
it's no surprise that this message really struck a chord.
It was a perfect storm.
Yeah.
He was intellectually curious,
Right.
searching for answers,
Yeah.
and the nation provided him with a framework
Okay.
for understanding his experiences and a path towards self-respect and dignity.
He describes his time in prison as this period of intense self-education.
Yeah.
He devoured books, he learned about Black history, and just immersed himself in the teachings of the Nation of Islam.
Right.
It's a remarkable transformation.
It is a testament to his incredible intellect and capacity for growth.
Yeah.
He was hungry for knowledge,
Right.
and he applied himself with just unwavering discipline.
Yeah.
You know, he saw education as a weapon,
Okay.
a tool for liberation,
Mhm.
and he used it to forge a new path for himself.
From Detroit Red to Malcolm X,
Yeah.
it's an incredible evolution.
It is, and this is really just the beginning.
Right.
His embrace of Islam,
Yeah.
his intellectual awakening,
Yeah.
and his burgeoning leadership within the Nation of Islam.
Mm-hmm.
This really set the stage for his rise as a powerful voice for Black empowerment.
Okay.
But that, as they say, is a story for another chapter.
Right. We're just scratching the surface here.
We are.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the life of Malcolm X. When we left off, he had just undergone this profound transformation in prison, embracing Islam and the teachings of the Nation of Islam.
His time behind bars really was a turning point.
Yeah.
It's where he sheds the skin of Detroit Red.
Right.
And emerges as Malcolm X,
Yeah.
a man driven by a thirst for knowledge
Okay.
and a commitment to Black empowerment.
So let's pick up the story from there. How does he go from being a student of Islam
Right.
to becoming one of the most prominent voices in the Nation of Islam?
Upon his release, Malcolm X fully dedicated himself to the Nation of Islam.
Okay.
His charisma, his intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
and his powerful oratory skills quickly made him a rising star within the organization.
Right.
He connected with people on a visceral level, articulating the pain and frustration and aspirations of Black Americans
Yeah.
in a way that really resonated deeply.
He became known as Minister Malcolm X, right?
He did.
What were the key tenets of his message during this period?
Well, his message was centered around Black self-reliance,
Okay.
separation from white society, and the condemnation of white oppression.
Okay.
He challenged the idea of integration, arguing that Black people needed to build their own institutions and communities,
Right.
free from the systemic racism that he saw in white America.
That must have been a pretty radical message at the time,
It was.
especially during the burgeoning civil rights movement.
While Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was advocating for integration and nonviolent resistance,
Right.
Malcolm X was calling for Black people to defend themselves
Okay.
by any means necessary against white aggression.
Okay.
His message, though controversial,
Yeah.
resonated with those who felt that the pace of change was too slow
Right.
and the compromises were too great.
His rhetoric was often fiery and confrontational,
Yes.
particularly his condemnation of the white devil.
Right.
Was this purely about anger and resentment?
Yeah.
Or was there a deeper strategy behind his words?
While his language could be inflammatory,
Yeah.
it was always rooted in a deep understanding of history
Mm-hmm.
and a sharp analysis of the power dynamics that were at play.
Right.
He was intentionally provocative,
Okay.
using shock tactics to disrupt complacency
Right.
and to force people to confront the brutal realities of racism.
He wasn't afraid to make people uncomfortable.
He
To
went-
challenge the status quo.
Exactly. He understood the power of language to awaken consciousness and to mobilize people.
Right.
He wasn't interested in making white people feel comfortable.
Okay.
He was interested in empowering Black people to fight for their own liberation.
His influence within the Nation of Islam grew rapidly. Can you talk about his impact on the organization
Uh-huh.
and its growth during this period?
Malcolm X played a key role in expanding the Nation of Islam's reach and influence.
Okay.
He established new temples, organized rallies,
Mm-hmm.
and gave countless speeches across the country.
Right.
He became a national figure,
Okay.
attracting media attention
Right.
and drawing large crowds wherever he went.
His relationship with Elijah Muhammad,
Right.
the leader of the Nation of Islam,
Yes.
seemed central to his work.
It was.
Can you describe the dynamics of their relationship?
Well, Malcolm X viewed Elijah Muhammad as a spiritual father, a mentor and a guide.
Okay.
He deeply revered him and saw him as the divinely appointed leader of black people.
Right.
He dedicated himself completely to spreading Elijah Muhammad's message
Okay.
and building the Nation of Islam.
But this seemingly unshakable bond eventually fractured,
It did.
leading to a dramatic break between them.
Right.
What were the key factors that led to this split?
Well, there were several factors at play.
Okay.
As Malcolm X's understanding of Islam deepened, he started to question some of the Nation of Islam's doctrines,
Okay.
particularly their emphasis on racial separatism.
His pilgrimage to Mecca,
Right.
where he witnessed Muslims of all races worshiping together,
Exactly.
seems to have been a really pivotal experience.
It was. It exposed him to a more universal form of Islam,
Right.
one that transcended racial boundaries.
Okay.
This experience, coupled with growing concerns about Elijah Muhammad's personal conduct,
Right.
created a deep internal conflict for Malcolm X.
Can you elaborate on these concerns about Elijah Muhammad?
Sure.
What specifically troubled him?
Rumors began to circulate about Elijah Muhammad's extramarital affairs and his fathering of children with several women within the Nation of Islam.
Wow.
This deeply troubled Malcolm X,
Right.
who had built his life and his reputation
Yeah.
on upholding the nation's strict moral code.
It must have been a devastating realization for him.
It
sounds like a profound betrayal of trust.
Malcolm X had placed Elijah Muhammad on a pedestal,
Right.
seeing him as a moral exemplar.
Yeah.
The realization of his hypocrisy shook him to his core,
Right.
forcing him to reassess everything he had believed in.
And this wasn't just a personal crisis.
No,
It also had major implications for his role within the Nation of Islam.
absolutely.
Hmm.
Malcolm X started to distance himself from the nation's leadership,
Okay.
expressing his concerns and calling for reforms. And this created tensions within the organization,
Right.
as some saw him as a threat to Elijah Muhammad's authority.
Did his public criticisms of Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam lead to any repercussions?
They did. Malcolm X was silenced,
Okay.
forbidden from speaking publicly on behalf of the nation.
Wow.
He also began to receive threats,
Gosh.
hinting that he was in danger.
Right.
The situation became increasingly volatile,
Okay.
and a break seemed inevitable.
So we're seeing this complex interplay of personal disillusionment.
Intellectual evolution and
Yeah.
political maneuvering.
It's all there.
What ultimately led to the final break between Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam?
Well, his suspension from the nation,
Okay.
following his controversial remarks about President Kennedy's assassination,
Right.
proved to be the breaking point.
Okay.
He was accused of insubordination and publicly chastised by Elijah Muhammad.
Let's unpack that controversy a little bit.
Okay.
What did Malcolm X say,
Okay.
and why was it considered so inflammatory?
In response to Kennedy's assassination, Malcolm X said that it was a case of chickens coming home to roost.
Okay.
He argued that the violence inflicted on Black people in America had created a climate of violence
Right.
that ultimately came back to haunt the nation.
That's a powerful statement.
It is.
But how was it interpreted at the time?
His words were widely condemned as celebrating violence
Right.
and disrespecting the slain president.
Okay.
However, Malcolm X insisted that he was simply pointing out the consequences of systemic injustice.
And the hypocrisy of a nation that mourned a white leader while ignoring the suffering of Black people.
This event seems to have marked a real turning point in his life, a moment of reckoning.
He was ostracized by the Nation of Islam,
All right.
facing threats to his safety and grappling with this profound sense of disillusionment.
Yeah.
But it also freed him to chart his own course,
Okay.
to develop his own ideas, and to build a new movement based on his evolving vision for Black empowerment.
So even amidst this turmoil, there's a sense of liberation,
There you-
new chapter unfolding.
Exactly. The break with the Nation of Islam, while painful and dangerous, allowed Malcolm X to embrace a more inclusive vision of Islam
Okay.
and to connect the Black struggle to a global fight for human rights and decolonization.
Right.
But that, as we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive, is a story for another time.
Welcome back to the deep dive. In this final part, we're going to be delving into Malcolm X's later years, a period marked by significant evolution in his thinking and a broadening of his vision for Black empowerment.
After leaving the Nation of Islam, Malcolm X embarked on a journey
Right.
that took him across the globe,
Okay.
exposing him to new ideas
Mm-hmm.
and forging connections with activists and leaders from various movements.
His travels to Africa and the Middle East seem to have had a profound impact on him.
They did.
Can you elaborate on what he learned
Sure, sir.
and how these experiences kind of shaped his worldview?
His travels, particularly his pilgrimage to Mecca, were transformative.
Okay.
Witnessing Muslims of all races worshiping together really challenged his previous beliefs about racial separatism,
Right.
leading him to embrace a more inclusive understanding of Islam.
So it seems like he started to see the struggle for Black liberation as part of a larger global fight against colonialism and oppression.
Exactly.
Hmm.
He recognized the interconnectedness of struggles against injustice,
Okay.
connecting the Black experience in America
Mm-hmm.
to the fight for independence in Africa
Yeah, right.
and the plight of oppressed people worldwide.
Okay.
This shift led him to embrace Pan-Africanism
Right.
and to advocate for human rights on a global scale.
He founded two organizations during this period,
He did.
the Muslim Mosque Inc. and the Organization of Afro-American Unity.
Right.
Can you talk about the purpose of these organizations and how they reflected this evolving vision?
The Muslim Mosque Inc. promoted a more orthodox and inclusive form of Islam,
Okay.
welcoming people of all races.
Right.
The Organization of Afro-American Unity, a secular organization
Mm-hmm.
focused on human rights, self-determination,
Oh, okay.
and uniting people of African descent globally.
So we're seeing a move from a more racially focused separatist ideology
Mhm.
to a broader human rights framework.
Right.
How did this shift manifest in his message and his activism?
Well, his rhetoric became more nuanced,
Yeah.
acknowledging the complexities of race, class, and power.
Right.
He continued to advocate for Black empowerment and self-defense, but he also emphasized the need for interracial alliances
Right.
and solidarity in the fight for justice.
Did his views on the civil rights movement and integration change during this period?
While he had previously criticized Dr. King's approach,
Uh-huh.
he began to see the value of strategic alliances
Right.
and recognized the importance of the civil rights movement's work.
Mm-hmm.
He never fully embraced integration,
Okay.
but he saw it as one tactic within a broader struggle for Black liberation.
It sounds like he was constantly evolving,
He was,
questioning his own assumptions
Yes.
and refining his strategies.
he was a fearless truth seeker,
Yeah.
always willing to challenge dogma
Right.
and to adjust his course based on new information and experiences.
Okay.
He was a revolutionary thinker,
Right.
and his ideas continued to evolve until his untimely death.
His assassination in 1965 was a tragic loss.
It was.
How do you think his legacy has endured?
Mm.
And how do his ideas continue to resonate today?
Well, Malcolm X's legacy is complex and multifaceted.
Mm.
He remains a controversial figure,
Of course.
but his impact on the Black Power movement,
Yeah.
the fight against racial injustice,
Yeah.
and the push for Black self-determination
Yeah.
is undeniable.
Right.
His emphasis on Black pride, self-reliance,
Okay.
and the need to control the narrative of the Black experience
Right.
continues to inspire activists and artists today.
His image and words still hold immense power,
They do.
serving as symbols of resistance and empowerment for marginalized communities
Yeah.
around the world.
His life story is a testament to the transformative power of education,
Okay.
the importance of critical thinking,
Right.
and the courage to challenge oppressive systems.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the life and legacy of Malcolm X,
Yeah.
what's one key takeaway you would like our listeners to consider?
Malcolm X's journey reminds us that growth and transformation are lifelong processes.
Okay.
His willingness to challenge his own beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
to evolve his thinking,
Right.
and to adapt his strategies in the face of new information
Yeah.
is an important lesson for us all.
We hope this deep dive has provided you with a deeper understanding of Malcolm X's complex and multifaceted life,
Right.
his enduring impact,
Yeah,
and the continued relevance of his ideas in today's world.
absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you then.